I'm going to assemble my MoGraph render from Cinema 4D. I might add a little sound effect to it, and I'm just going to have a look at some of the simple options in terms of how we deal with the images that we bring into After Effects, and then we're going to export it using Media Encoder. So I'm in After Effects. I'm just going to go to my File menu and import my file sequence. I've rendered mine to a folder on my desktop. Now I've got this series of PNG files that I've rendered. To import this sequence, I just need to select the first frame and just make sure the sequence checkbox is turned on in my options. Don't select all the files, they'll come through as individual frames. That's not what you want. You just want to grab the first frame, make sure sequence is on, and import it. Now there's a couple of things we need to check out here which is really important. When we select this file sequence that's been brought in, we get a summary of its properties in After Effects. At the top here, it's from frame 0 to 100. It's 1920 by 1080, so it's full high definition. What's interesting here is that it's at 30 frames a second. So After Effects defaults to 30 frames a second. You can change it in your preferences. But just keep an eye on this. My sequence that I've rendered out of Cinema 4D was at 25 frames a second. So I need to tell After Effects this is actually meant to be 25 frames a second, not 30. So the way that we do that is right-click our sequence, go to the Interpret Footage settings, and in these main Interpret settings, we can tell After Effects what this sequence should be, what it should have for its frame rate. Okay. So that's that correct now. Now I want to create a new composition out of this footage. So there's a couple of ways to do that. One is to drag and drop it on this new composition button here. The other way is to actually just drag and drop it over here onto our new composition graphic in the composition window. Now what that does is it creates a composition that is exactly the length of our clip with the same resolution and the same frame rate. So that's great. Now one thing you might have noticed here as well is that the gradient I had in the background from my physical sky from Cinema 4D has disappeared. And what we've got here is the text, and it's been cut out. So when we were in Cinema 4D setting up our render settings, if we have another quick look in here, one thing that we turned on was this alpha channel for our 3D renders. What the alpha channel does is it creates a mask around the 3D objects so that we can composite them if we want to on top of or underneath or around other elements in After Effects. Now because this is a very basic introduction animation and I'm not planning to do any compositing with this, I actually want my background. I don't want it cut out from the alpha channel. So once again we can go back to the footage and interpret this footage, go into the main settings, and what we're looking at here is these settings at the top of this dialog box. So what we can do is we can ignore the alpha channel, and the great thing is it updates in our view here as soon as we change these. So we can ignore the alpha channels, we can ignore the cutout that Cinema 4D has created. If we wanted to, we could keep it on, and as I said before, that means we could composite it. So let's ignore the alpha channel and hit OK. Great, so there we go, there's our MoText with our animation, and that's great. Now I want to put a little bit of a sound effect with this as well, just so that it's a little bit more interesting. And I've got a sound effect. Now I downloaded this one from one of the premiumbeat.com free sound packs. This is the cinematic, what's it called? Cinematic Sounds, Beach and Sunrise. This was a free one they gave away. I'm not sponsored by Premium Beat at all. I just use a few of their things. I find them quite handy. And I've got a sound effect here. It's just a little wee quiet sort of musical hit, and I'm just going to drag and drop this into my After Effects project. Now After Effects, it can composite graphics and film and images and text, but you can also put sound into these timelines as well. Now if I preview this timeline here, I can just hit 0 on my keyboard, and once the line here has gone green, we can just hear now that that is got a little sound effect. Now, what I'd quite like, it's a little wee hit noise I'd quite like that to match up a little bit better with my graphic, and I think maybe once the graphic comes up and sort of hits the top, that's probably a better point for that sound effect to start. So I'm going to grab the sound effect and just slide it along on the timeline, just so it starts at the point when my M from my MoText shoots to the top there. So let's have a look at that. Might just shift it back just a frame or two. That'll do me. It's just something really simple, just so that we can test how this project is working out, and just do a quick example of putting some sound with some graphics. Okay, now the great thing about After Effects, of course, if we wanted to, we could select our graphics layer, we could go to our effects and maybe put some color correction on here, maybe a curves or something if we wanted to just sort of boost the lighting a little bit in there. We can do obviously a whole bunch of different things in here. For this particular project, I'm just going to do something pretty crazy with my curves here. I've just clicked a few extra times there on the line and made some extra points, so let's just reset that. I just wanted it a little bit brighter. That's better. So this is just a really basic color correction I've done to my movie here. So that's a little brighter. I like that a little bit better. Okay, let's save this project. That's all I'm doing for now. File, save as. I'm just going to save on the desktop in my MoGraph folder. MoText. There we go. That's my After Effects project saved. That's all I'm going to do in After Effects. I'm going to quit out of here, and I'm going to use Adobe Media Encoder to turn that After Effects project into a movie file. So here's Adobe Media Encoder. It's already open in the background. What I'm going to do is go to my desktop. I'm going to find that MoText folder. There's my After Effects project. I'm going to drag and drop it into Media Encoder. Now what Media Encoder will do is it will have a look through that project, and it'll find any compositions that we have in After Effects in that particular project file. Sometimes it's a little slow hunting through your project. If you've got a lot of compositions, it could take quite a while. But this has come up now. There's that MoText sequence. This is the composition I want to render. So I'm going to select it and hit OK. And I'm going to just do a standard H.264 movie, which is a pretty standard type of digital movie file format. Under the presets, I'm going to match source, high bitrate. This means match the source, match the resolution and frame rate of the project. High bitrate means high quality. And the last thing I'm going to do is choose where I want to save my file, and by default it's actually putting it in the same folder as my After Effects project, which is fine. So now I can just hit the play button at the top right, and Media Encoder will take that After Effects project. It'll combine that rendered footage out of Cinema 4D, it'll apply that color correction effect to it, and it'll add in the sound. And it should be fairly quick to render this, because there's not many effects, there's not many layers, there's not much processing that needs to go on. So once this is prepped and once it's fired up the render for that composition, it should be fairly quick. We'll have a look at that movie in the playlist on YouTube.